Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Welcome to another video. Today's video I'll be sharing a little bit about my experience with sleep training my 2-month-old. So one of the causes of postpartum depression is lack of sleep, is to be sleep deprived, and that's what happened to me. Like I shared in another video in my channel about my experience with postpartum depression, and I know that the main cause for me was not only like the life change and the challenges of motherhood, but especially being sleep deprived. So much so that I would have my crisis at night when I was like constantly being awake and not being able to fully sleep. I remember like some days I would sleep like 2 hours for the whole night, and that was like driving me nuts. So having your baby to be in a good schedule and sleeping through the night is not only good so you can, plan around their schedule, but it's also like healthy for us as parents. So we are making sure that we are taking care of ourselves as well and getting the rest that our bodies need. So just to share a little bit of background, when my baby, he went to his 2-month appointment, he was waking up still like pretty much every 3 hours. And when we got there, the pediatrician said that he was supposed to be sleeping 5.5 to 6 hours straight, and that was not happening. Like it probably happened twice, but it wasn't definitely happening consistently. He was like waking up every 3 hours. Even though I wasn't waking him up overnight, he was still waking up. So I'm like, okay, so there's something wrong. So one day my mom came to my house and she saw how I was putting my baby in the crib, and I was literally like just putting him in his PJs in the crib, and that was it. And then 3 hours later he would wake up. And so when my mom saw that, so this tip is really basic, I bet a lot of people do that, which is swaddle your baby. I wasn't swaddling him, I was just putting him in his PJs, and my mom saw that and she was like, Juliana, this baby is cold. Like when you go to bed, you have your blanket, like you're wearing your PJ, but you also have a blanket, a comforter and stuff. He is only in his PJs, so he is definitely cold. So the first thing we did when my mom came, like he was still sleeping waking up every 3 hours. So on that day, we put on a swaddle, and the swaddle I use for him is this one, which has, this one is good for transitioning, because this is a 3 to 6 month size. So once he start rolling, he's 4 months now. Once he start rolling, I'm not gonna use this part. I'm just gonna attach this underneath his arms, but I'm not gonna swaddle him. So I like this one. It is fleece, so it's very comfy and warm. And I use that even in the summer because we use AC inside of our house, so it doesn't really make a difference, what temperature is outside. So I use this one. In the first night we swaddled him with this warm swaddle, he slept 5.5 hours. So that is my first tip for you guys: swaddle your baby. Make sure that he's comfortable, that the temperature is good for him, that he's feeling warm, because the uterus is warm, so he needs to feel warm in order to feel cozy and sleep longer. My second tip would be feed your baby every 3 hours during the day. So as I shared in my past video about postpartum depression, if you guys haven't checked that one, go to my channel and make sure to check that out. I shared really good tips about overcoming postpartum depression. But since it was being really hard for me to wake up my baby at night, and I know that some people are not even recommended to do that, but I was, I'm like, I'm not gonna wake him up at night anymore. But to make sure that he was getting a good amount of milk, he was having a good milk intake during the day for that 24 hours, I was waking him up every 3 hours. And later on, I came to find out that babies, they actually have an amount of calories they are supposed to intake a day. And if they don't have that supplement, if they don't take that amount, they will wake up overnight to make sure that they are making up for it. So that's why I was feeding my baby every 3 hours during the day. Even if he was sleeping, I would wake him up If he was hungry before 3 hours, no problem, I would still feed him like every 2 or every 2.5, however hungry he was. But because of that calorie that he needed, I was making sure that he was eating well during the day, so that at night he wasn't as hungry and he would sleep longer. My third tip is pay attention to his naps. So I would notice that my baby, so I'll call him by his name, so Liam, my baby, I noticed that whenever he was sleeping too much during the day, he wouldn't sleep as good at night. But also, when he wasn't sleeping enough, he would also not sleep good at night. He would get overtired, and when babies get overtired, they release the stress hormone, so it makes it hard for them to fall asleep. So I had to find a balance. Okay, so how much does my baby need to sleep during the day in order to sleep good at night? So first thing, you have to know your baby's wake window. When I started doing that with Liam, he was 2 months old still, and his wake window was about, I think it was like an hour and a half awake max, but probably mostly like an hour. He would stay awake for an hour and then he would have to go to his next nap. So know your baby's wake window, because that helps you to know when he starts getting fussy, if it's been that an hour that he's been awake, he's probably tired. So I would know that, okay, so it's time for my baby to go to bed. And then I also found out that the time of naps during the day is anywhere between, the length is anywhere between 20 minutes to 2 hours, which is very broad. But just by observing Liam, I could tell that if he was, because his wake window was an hour, but the max, if I let him sleep, he would sleep like 2 hours or even more than that. So if I woke him up at like 30 minutes nap, that would not be enough for him, because 2 hours, like he would sleep great if I let him to. So I would just observe him and see how much he needed to sleep in order to be okay. Sometimes I would let him sleep 2 hours, especially if it was like early in the day, I would let him sleep 2 hours. But if it was getting later, like around like 4, 5-ish, and he still needed his naps, I would give him like an hour nap and he would be fine with it. So like with half the time he would be okay with it. Less than that, he would get a little stressed, a little fussy. So just know your baby and see, but don't let him go over the 2-hour mark, because otherwise you'll be sleeping too much during the day and not be tired enough at night. But also make sure that that your baby is taking their naps during the day, so they don't get overtired and sleep at night. My fourth tip is practice putting your baby in bed awake, or at least drowsy. And the reason behind it is, so even us as adults, we go through sleeping cycles. So we go through from like light sleep into deep sleep and back to light sleep and deep sleep throughout the night. With babies, same thing. But us, we know that we went to bed, we recognize our bed, we know that we went there by ourselves. It's a familiar environment. But for babies, once they are being rocked to sleep, they know that they are in our arms, they are smelling our smell, they are feeling the warmth of our bodies. So that's where they fell asleep. When we put them in the crib and then they wake up there hours later, they're like, what the heck? This is not where I fell asleep. What place is that? How did I end up here? And then they freak out. So that's why it's important for babies to learn how to fall asleep. Because once they go through this sleeping cycle and they reach the light sleep and they happen to wake up, they don't freak out. They know that they are able to fall asleep on their own. So this is very important, and I would practice with my baby during his naps. I wouldn't do that like all the time. It doesn't necessarily need to be done every single nap, but I would try to do at least once a day. So he would be able to understand that, okay, this is my bed, I recognize, you know, this environment, and I know that it's safe for me to fall asleep, and I know how to, you know. Sometimes I had to go back in the room and I comfort him because he wouldn't know yet how to fall asleep. But the more I did it, the easier it got for him to be able to fall back asleep on his own. So I would just encourage you guys to, you know, if you haven't done that yet, just practice. Even like when the baby is drowsy, even if he's not fully awake, put them like drowsy, like rock him a little bit, and then practice putting them in the crib and see if they fall asleep. You can like remove yourself from their view and then just watch and see if they are being able to fall back asleep on their own. Sometimes they will like talk a little bit, you know, toss and turn and whine. I wouldn't interfere. Only if he really cried is that when I would do something about it. But if he's just like whining and talking, I would just let him be, and most of the times he would be able to fall back asleep on his own. And then my other tip is make sure that your baby is sleeping in a dark room, especially starting around 3 months old, where their awareness start getting more sharp. You know, they start seeing more, and then they are looking around, and they start getting distracted by their surroundings instead of falling asleep. So I always make sure that the room where when I put my baby down, it's as dark as possible, so he's not gonna be distracted by his surroundings. He'll be able to fall asleep and have that cozy feel that he's safe, that he's okay, that there's nothing to be seen, and then he'll just fall asleep. Also, another tip, I always use a sound machine, because in the womb there is lots of noises, right, of like our bodies, our organs working. So babies are familiar with noise. It's weird for them if it's too quiet. So a sound machine, the sound that I noticed that my baby really likes is the ocean waves or rain. So I always have that on, and I even have a portable sound machine, because then when I need to like grocery shop or go somewhere, I just use the portable one and put his car seat, and he falls asleep. So it feels like he's a little bit of the feeling of when he's at home, you know. So I always make sure that I have a sound machine on. And last, it is comfort your baby. You know, not every time that the baby wakes up at night, he needs to be picked up, and you don't need to always do something with him. You know, it's not always that you need to feed him or change his diaper or rock him. Sometimes you just gotta comfort him. So as I explained earlier, like the sleeping cycle, sometimes the baby will wake up, you know, he went through like he went off the deep sleep, and then he's like in that more light sleep, and he will wake up and cry for a little bit, but that's okay. So what I usually do, I wait, see if he's gonna fall back asleep. Sometimes he's just whining, so I'm like, okay, let's see if he falls back asleep. If he doesn't, I would just go close to him and comfort him by like putting my hand on his chest and doing like shh, maybe rocking him. Like our bassinet, he rocks, so I just like rock the bassinet. If it doesn't rock, you can just like touch your baby and like rock the baby, you know, like this. But just try to comfort the baby instead of doing something, because sometimes he is active sleeping, and then if you grab him out of his crib, you are actually waking him up. So just try to like assure to them that they are okay, that they can fall back asleep. If they don't fall back asleep, okay, so then something needs to be done, right? Like they need to be fed or changed or whatever. But I always try that first before grabbing, and that worked many times. So yeah guys, these are my tips for you. With me, it really worked. So I shared that my baby at 2 months old, he was sleeping only 3 hours, you know, and waking up, and then with the swaddle he slept 5.5 hours. And after I started doing all these other things like feeding, I was already feeding him every 3 hours during the day, but I started paying more attention to naps and practicing putting him in bed awake. Dark room and sound machine, I always used it. And the comfort, you know, just like assuring that everything is okay instead of picking him up. So he was able to sleep like 8 hours straight at 2 months still. So I feel like I had a really good progress comparing to when I first went to the pediatrician until, you know, when he was like 2.5 months old, where he was already sleeping 8 hours straight. So I would just encourage you guys to try it out and let me know if it worked. I hope it does. And if you like this kind of content, subscribe to my channel. I'll plan on posting more tips that have been helping me go through motherhood in an easier way. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys have an awesome day. Bye.